Hello, everyone. Welcome to Pints and Politics. You got me, you got Drew, and we got Representative Mike Weiner. Mike, how you doing today?
I'm doing good. I'm back home in district. Just got home this evening, just a little bit ago, and glad to be here and talking with you.
Awesome, awesome. How's session been? I've heard some stories. I heard, Congress is back to work. The Democrats are in. There's a deal. We're investigating fraud, and there's been a couple of bills that have been exciting. One of which has something to do with Social Security. Let's start with that.
Right. Aaron Rapinski is a freshman legislator. He's carrying the elimination of the Social Security tax,
Okay.
which is a good thing. It's kind of interesting the history of that goes back. Ronald Reagan put that in place, and now I think there's 8 states that still tax Social Security. And that tax was put into place because they thought the system was going to go bankrupt. And it was also the economic issues in the early 80s. And right now, the Democrats are fighting to keep it in place, which is kind of funny. So they're fighting to keep a Reagan program in place.
Have you called any of them Republicans yet for defending
Well,
Ronald Reagan?
it was kind of funny when one of them that brought it up, because last year on the floor when we were talking about this, I brought it up that it was a Reagan bill. And in committee, one of them didn't acknowledge that this was a Reagan bill.
That's funny. It's also really strange because the Social Security money is tax dollars, isn't it?
So you're taxed on it when it's first taken out of your paycheck, and then when you
Yeah,
take
and then
it to the system, it's taxed again. There was some discussion in committee that some folks made the claim that it wasn't double taxation, but it obviously is.
yeah. Well, how is it not? Because it's tax dollars to give to yourself. So you're basically taking from everyone to, and honestly, it's okay. I'm not going to go hard against Social Security right now. Um, because you're taking money from everyone's paycheck and then you're distributing it to the retirees, right? And then
Well,
the retirees are getting taxed on tax money. I don't understand how that works.
so some of that is investing, and
Okay.
some of it ends up in the stock market, I believe. So it's not all your money. Hey, Joe. Hey. My son Joe just walked in. So what they're saying is that it's not all your money that you put in, so it's not all taxed. Therefore, it should be taxed when you take it out. But really, that's kind of beside the point. Inflation itself adds to some of that. But here's the thing, and this was what came up in committee. There was talk about we shouldn't be giving the rich tax breaks because the lower brackets are not paying taxes on Social Security. That has changed in Minnesota, but the upper bracket is still paying taxes on it.
Okay.
And the argument that we kept hearing was that the it would negatively impact our state budget if we dropped the rest of the Social Security tax. After listening to quite a bit of testimony on this, I was really kind of tired of hearing it. And I said, my argument, and I've got a clip of it I'm going to be putting out on Facebook, was, this is one of those philosophical debates that we have. Who knows better to do? Who knows better what to do with your money than you? You know, I
Right.
believe that the individual can make that decision. The folks on the other side of the aisle believe that it's the state who makes that decision. And I disagree with them wholeheartedly. When you work your life so that you can get to your golden years, you put money away, you scrimp, you save, you do whatever you can to get there. And now the state says we get some of that money. It's just wrong.
Yeah,
So
and I think that has something to do with authoritarian mindset, where again they have their agenda and they think they're doing what's best for everyone, air quotes, and that's why they say they should be the ones spending your money, even though I think what's the average medium income right now in Minnesota?
state of
Was it
Minnesota, the median
90,000?
is it's like 87 and change, basically just shy of 90,000.
Yeah. And how much of that money do you lose? It's probably a couple of $1,000s, maybe. I'm not going to say 10,000, but it's got to be up there with that income just take removed. And even with a couple of $100, that's groceries for a month,
Right.
depending on
But
your
now,
family. Hell, I mean, you could even buy like two cartons of eggs with a couple $100.
The Valentine's gift this year, isn't it? You know,
Yeah.
roses were expensive before, but nothing says I love you like a dozen eggs. That's what I hear the new Valentine gift is.
Yeah, nothing shows your love with those dozen eggs by egging the house. Show it's a status symbol now.
Exactly. No, it is interesting. I believe that those individuals, those people who have set that money aside, who've done what they're supposed to, they should be able to say, okay, we want to give this to our grandkids, or we want to invest in whatever trips. You know, they've worked for this. For the state to say that's not their money and we get to take that, I just cannot wrap my head around that mindset. And it's not like this is ultra rich or the uber rich. You know, you're talking that tax bracket is a little over 100,000,
Okay, so just over average, just above
just over the
average.
median. Exactly. It really shows you it's that socialism, communist mindset that we get to decide what's best for you as the state. And,
That's
and
fair.
that's what's happening in the state of Minnesota. So we're working on repealing that. Aaron Rapinski has a good bill there. Glad to hear him testify in the tax committee on it. Glad to push that through. It's going to go through a couple other committees, I believe, yet. So it's got a little bit of work, but hopefully we can make some progress on it.
Yeah, that's really cool.
Oh,
Um,
the other thing, before I forget, the Democrats and Tim Walz actually campaigned on this in 2022 that it was going to
yeah,
be a full repeal of the Social Security tax. And now
really.
they're going to keep it. Yes.
You know what you should do while we're still on the subject is you should, if there next time there's discussion, play the audio of Tim Walz campaigning on it and other Democrats, like actual video, and
I
then
know.
just
I'm sorry, go ahead.
yeah, well, if you can find the audio or the video of it, of them saying that, just evidence of it, show that to the tax committee, and then just what changed. You know, it's a little question.
What's funny right now, and we keep hearing this, that we're heading towards this budget deficit, and we're looking at a $5 billion deficit. We didn't hear those concerns when they blew through the 19, almost $20 billion surplus and raised 10 billion more, but now all of a sudden they're concerned about a budget deficit.
Well, it's if I'm not mistaken, I think didn't we hear talk of deficit spending getting proposed by the Democrats last year?
Well, in the state of Minnesota, we have a balanced budget amendment,
Mm.
so we have to make changes. And if you look back at the state budget in, I think it was '08, that was when the housing bubble hit and
Okay.
revenues to the state decreased. So therefore the budget decreased as well. And I think it went back, it was three, almost $4 billion at that time. So they had to cut the budget almost $4 billion. But interesting enough to note is that the state budget has more than doubled in 10 years.
Yeah.
It's gone from about 35 billion to over 70 billion in 10 years. Have your
Wow.
wages doubled? You know, has your
No.
take home pay doubled? No,
No.
nobody's has, but government has. And it's still not enough for them.
That's that's really interesting you bring that up because I don't know, do you remember like history class when they were talking about the 20s or something where they were talking about the robber barons and Teddy Roosevelt was going against them and the robber barons were using high tech. There's a Ethan, you'll have to find this for us, but there is a an image where there is a guy grinding a like a fat robber baron just grinding somebody down between high rents and high taxes, grinding down the poor for money, like squeezing a blood out of a turnip kind of a deal. And I'm getting vibes from that when we talk about the deficit spending and the need to raise taxes and the cost of eggs and just everything going up with inflation.
Right.
And I know this legislature is different this year because of the tie, and there's going to have to be changes, and there are agreed changes, such as investigating fraud. We got some really interesting fraud investigations going on right now. The Feeding Our Future scandal is in court, and we will be given updates as that goes. Well, when it finishes, because I'm really curious to see what the results of that are.
Well, the
But
other
just,
thing
yeah,
we
go
see
ahead.
happening at the national level with so much different
Oh, yeah.
money that Doge is finding. And we knew some of this. I mean, we've been talking about the daycare scandal in Minnesota for 10 years. You know, the feeding our future. There's been so much wasted money in government. Well, there was an appeal to the federal government to start looking into Minnesota. And the federal government has started looking into, and I think they've actually got some civil charges against some individuals, some politicians in New York, and I believe Indiana, if I recall correctly. And I think Minnesota's got its has a target on it.
Yeah, we should
Future
because
investigations.
yeah. So something I'm a little remiss to say is that Tim Walz did a really good thing for Minnesota by running for governor because he put a spotlight on the entire state. I say I'm remiss to say that because Tim Walz is an embarrassment, and watching him campaign for vice president, I had a really hard time just watching that out of just shame and embarrassment because of that man, how corrupt he is, and just kind of how goofy he is, how weird. But he really did. He put a spotlight on Minnesota, and so at the national level, we should be getting this attention. And I think Elon Musk might be taking some interest with Doge, and I'm hoping Pam Bondi looks into some of our stuff. Um, I was talking to Michelle Fishbach a bit ago. I ran into her at an event, and I talked to her about it. And I think she's gonna request that Pam Bondi do some investigations in Minnesota for some of this fraud stuff. I believe
They're
Keith
heading
Ellison
right,
might be involved. Nope, don't quote me on that, but looking ahead, there might be some stuff going on there. Because
they're heading
Keith has
right.
been kind of mad. He's sued, he's filed a lawsuit about the transgender athletes in high school, and that got shot down recently.
Right.
Yeah, judge agreed, the Supreme Court agreed with Trump, where you can't have biological men competing in women's sports, which is great. I definitely like to see women be athletic. It's fun. And it's also fun watching guys be athletic. We got to promote that. It builds competition and good character. And I feel like I'm rambling, Mike, but a lot of good things happening at the national level, a lot of interesting things happening at the state level.
I
Am I
agree.
correct? Yeah.
And I think what you're seeing at the national level, why there's so much backlash from the liberals is
Mhm.
because this is how campaign funds are funneled. Your taxpayer dollars are getting funneled through some of these organizations, through some of this. It's basically money laundering through them back to those campaigns. And in Minnesota, it's the same way. Once
Yeah.
that the light gets shed on that, I think it'll be very interesting. And I think that Democrat machine that outspends the Republicans, you know, 5, 6, 7, 8 to 1, will change rather quickly. I don't
Yeah.
believe this is the blue state or even the purple state that they talk about. I think it's much more red than people realize. But the money that's out there that corrupts our elections and so forth, it's huge. We
Oh, absolutely.
cut those purse strings and it'll change in Minnesota.
Absolutely. The stuff that's been coming out with the USAID investigations has been mind blowing. We won't get into that today, but if you have time, like look it up. It's insane how much money, like USAID, for example, was actually sending money to, I think it was Politico, one of the big news outlets,
Yes.
um, for a Democrat propaganda. Very interesting. And so we're combating fraud now. We're investigating it. There's something else we got to bring up real quick. So a hard transition. There has been a bill. I saw this brought forth to amend the Constitution to reallocate senators for as every county gets their own senator. What can you say about that?
Yeah, I think it's a great bill.
Yeah, who
And
brought it forth?
well,
I don't
actually,
remember.
I don't want to take credit for that because the real idea comes from Alan Lisdahl in
Yeah.
Wadena, Minnesota. He was the one that
Yeah.
talked to me about it.
Yep. And he's been on the show before, so if you can find that episode, it was really neat. He's got a lot of good ideas.
He does. So
Yes.
basically, what it does is it would set us the same as what the federal um, allocations, I guess, are. So at the federal level, every state has two senators, no matter what your population is.
Mhm.
And then the House is set up by population. So in the state of Minnesota, the way our House and Senate is set up is our House is set by population, and then there's one senator per every two House members. So it's really kind of redundant. So what this bill does is it sets one senator per county,
Yep.
that there's equal representation for each area. And when Alan first discussed it with me, I thought about it for a little bit and I went, ooh, I like that. I really like that.
Right.
So did some research, looked it up a little bit, and it would take, or it's going to take a constitutional amendment.
Mhm.
And, to get any of those constitutional amendments across the finish line, it takes time. It takes a
Yep.
little bit of publicity. It takes some working. A lot of times those constitutional amendments can take several um, election cycles to
Hmm.
even make it to that point. But the fact that we have the bill now, dropped it the other day, we have a Senate companion, hoping to get a committee hearing on it and to try to get some of that pushed forward so that we can at least get it out in the public eye. On the way home today, I got a text message from an individual in southern Minnesota, saw the bill, and said, "This is a great bill, Mike. Thanks for putting this forward." So
Yeah.
it got a little bit of publicity already.
Great. No, that's awesome. Because again, we had talked about this before on the show, and it goes back to this old trope that we say over and over and over again that the government nearest and closest to the people is that which is most effective. And what this
Mm-hmm.
bill would do, and if I'm not mistaken, is allow you're more likely to run into your state senator, really, is what it is. The cities has 67 senators out of all of them, right?
No, not quite that many. There's 87 counties in the state.
Yep.
So right now we have um 67 senators total.
Okay, that's what it is. We have 67 total, and it's over 20 of them live in the metro area.
Yes.
Yep.
Because of the population in the metro, they have a disproportionate representation in the Senate. But now some areas, say like mine, five, Senate District 5, I have parts of four counties just in my House district. In the
Yep.
Senate district, I think there's parts of eight counties, and one senator has to cover all of that area. Where if
And it's
this
a pretty
changed,
large area.
oh, it's huge. So if this changed, now you'd have one senator for Todd County, one senator for Wadena, one senator for Morrison. So there would be, and it would add people to or senators to government. It would grow the size of government a little bit, but it would also give equal representation to each of those counties.
Well, not only that, but the communities would have more of a say in what happens in their government. And I think
Yes.
and that's almost just as important as saying equal representation in the areas because it allows different communities because you live in Todd County, I live in Wadena County. We have very separate issues that, well, most of them are the same because we're like sister counties, but a lot of it is different.
Hmm.
I don't know if you guys have a wolf population as much of an issue as we do up here, but like I
Not
talked to farm, yeah, but we all have wolf problems just in different degrees, or you might have something happen with more lakes or trapping, just other things, commerce,
hmm
and it's worth looking into. And again, you got to give a shout out to the one county, one senator deal, and we'll keep an eye on that. And we should shout it out every once in a while. just keep that publicity going. So because it's important.
Well, and we've really seen a change, a demographic change over the years, where
Mhm.
Minnesota used to be, the population used to be more rural, and it has changed to more urban.
Yep.
So the idea was when it was set up that it would be better dispersed. But now with those demographic changes, it's disproportionately heavy to the metro. And then that means that the other counties don't have the representation that they should.
That's really interesting because I guess what's the largest county in the state? Is it Otter Tail County or is it one that's closer to Duluth?
I think it's St. Louis County, isn't it, up by Duluth?
Okay, because I'm just thinking about it because it's about an hour from like in Otter Tail County. It's about an hour from Perham to Little Falls, which is the county seat. And I guess I haven't really been up to St. Louis County, but if that's even bigger, you're looking at having to span just a diameter of an hour, hour and a half drive. And that's hard to do, especially in the winter.
Right. It is difficult, you know, and then those are sparsely populated counties generally. So how do they get represented like they should?
Exactly. So one county, one senator would make it, I guess, slightly easier because in a
Mhm.
sparsely populated county like St. Louis, excluding Duluth, that senator has to span that most of that county and neighboring counties, which are similar size.
So the other thing that it would do is we often hear about gerrymandering, right?
Hmm. Yeah, oh
Gerrymandering
yeah.
happens every 10 years when they look at the census and the new districts are laid out, right? And we're
Mhm.
supposed to figure out how equal representation takes place. Well, there's always this creative line drawing that takes place when they do this, and you'll see areas get cut out. You'll see senators redistrict into a or two senators and all of a sudden in the same district. That would eliminate all of this. The
Mhm.
county lines are already drawn. Those individuals would not change with the census. So therefore, that gerrymandering wouldn't be affected or wouldn't be as effective when it comes to the Senate races.
Yeah, you'd have a much more stable Senate with a more raucous House.
And it's raucous enough the way it is, so I don't know
I
that we
know.
need any more in the House. But
Yeah,
um,
that's kind of why I started to smirk. It's funny because the Senate is always portrayed as distinguished and gentlemanly, where the House is just this rabble who wears hoodies to Congress.
well, and what does Senate mean? I believe the it actually means old men.
Yep, in Latin, yeah, old man.
Yeah.
It's like the
So
Council
that's
of Elders.
right. That stability, I think, is essential to the Senate. You know, and if their lines are getting redrawn every 10 years, that doesn't offer that stability. You know, and let's just copy what happens at the federal level, apply it to the state level, and move forward.
Yeah, it would make things a lot simpler. It would. But is there any other topics you want to get to?
Um,
I believe there was one more, but I don't quite remember.
we talked about the legislation, Browerville School. We testified for that this week. Last year, that um, material for the school and the tax exemption for that made it all the way to conference committees. Basically, that was one of the last things that got cut out, and it's would save the taxpayers in Browerville about 500,000, almost 600,000, I think, on the building of their school, and that not the school but the gymnasium. Their roof had collapsed because of too much snow on the roof. Really unfortunate situation. If it had been a storm, if it had been a tornado that took it down, would have been all covered by insurance and other stuff. But because of the way it went down, they lost out big time. So the other thing is, why are we charging taxes on material for a public building like that? So we see these things come forward quite a bit in the tax committee, and a lot of times they get granted. Well, unfortunately, Browerville did not make the cut last year, but we had a hearing for them. The superintendent, Scott Van Broughton, came down, testified. was a good committee. Hopefully we can get that across the finish line. I did have some other visitors I wanted to give a shout out to this week. Um, the sheriffs, Sheriff Mike Carr and Sean Larson. So Mike Carr is in Wadena County. Sean is in Morrison County. They came down and visited unexpectedly. It was a nice visit. And Mike Axmet too from the bus company. He deals with a lot of the local public schools, provides busing. And I bring these guys up because I really enjoy when people from home come down to visit. You know, it's I would rather get information and talk to folks here. But a lot of times what happens in that environment, people go to the lobbyists. Um, Politicians go to the lobbyists to get information. I would much rather talk to my local sheriff and say, look, this is a bill that's coming up in public safety or whatever. I want to know how it's going to directly affect the people in Todd County or Wadena County. Whereas a lobbyist or a group like that is going to tell you what's going to happen over the whole state. Well, every one of our counties is different. And I want to talk to the people with their boots on the ground and how it's going to affect our people locally. So I really appreciate when those folks come down, make as much time as we can, sit down. It's great to visit, you know, when we have those people come down to the Capitol. I really enjoy it. And the homeschoolers were down today.
Oh,
So that was
nice.
a good visit.
That's good. It's almost like you represent the people and not the not a select group of really wealthy lobbyists.
I think that's important. Who is really responsible for the work that I do? Who basically pays my check? It's the taxpayers. You
Absolutely.
know, those are the people I serve. Those are the people I work for. Those are the people I represent. And I really do take that. It's a huge responsibility and I enjoy doing it for them.
Yeah. That's a great mindset going into that. And I think we need more people like that. You got anything else before we sign off, Mike? I think we covered a
Oh,
couple
no,
good things.
I think we did as well. I'll keep you updated on what happens in the House. And
That's
we're going to keep an eye on what happens at the national level too. I think things are getting interesting and it's fun to watch.
awesome. Well, again, make sure you like please write your representative, tell them whether they're doing a good job or a bad job. Let them know you care. Um, look up the one county, one senator policy. It's a great, absolutely great. It would do wonders for just community representation in Minnesota. It'd be fantastic to see that. But
Sure
thank you
will.
guys so much for watching Pints and Politics from Minnesota. You got Drew Peterson and Representative Mike Weiner. God bless.
Take care.